Hey everyone, Kanye here, and today I'm going to be ranking every Kanye West album, other than Cruel Summer if you count that. This will just be based on my opinion and nothing else. I know this isn't my normal content, but I hope you can enjoy it anyways. Also, just a quick note before I start the list, I do like all of these albums. I don't consider a single Kanye album to be bad. Without further ado, let's get right into the list. I don't think anyone has not put Jesus is King as Kanye's worst solo album. I like the album, but it's a very mixed bag for me. Songs like Water and Closed on Sunday bring the album down quite a bit, but it also has a few really good tracks. My personal favorites would have to be Follow God, Salah, and Use This Gospel, and I would probably give this album a 7 out of 10. I hate putting this album so low because I really like this album. With the exceptions of See You in My Nightmares and Say You Will, this album is all good songs. This album is also one of Kanye's most important albums, as artists like Drake and Travis Scott have cited 808s as a major influence in their music. My personal favorite songs from the album would have to be Streetlights, Paranoid, and Heartless, and I would give this album a 7.5 out of 10. This album is a collaboration with Kid Cudi and is greatly praised from Kanye's fans. I personally really like this album, but it's for sure overrated for me. There are some tracks that just never seemed amazing to me, like the self-titled track Kids See Ghosts and Cudi Montage. It definitely has its highlights though, with my personal favorites being Fourth Dimension and Fire. I would personally give this album a 7.5 out of 10. I have a lot of mixed feelings on Donda, while I do really like it. The actual album feels a little too long, and I feel like the part 2 tracks could have just been taken off entirely or put on the deluxe version. Some tracks are also very skippable as well, such as Jesus Lord, which is way too long in my opinion, the self-titled track, Donda, and Tell the Vision. Other than these tracks though, I love the rest of the album. Some of my favorite tracks include Heaven and Hell, Jail, Off the Grid, Praise God, and Come to Life, and I would rate it a 7.5 out of 10. While being Kanye's shortest album, the tracks that are on it are all really good. The intro from All Mine is the only big problem I have with the songs themselves, being pretty annoying honestly. Some of my favorite tracks include Ghost Town, I Thought About Killing You, and Wouldn't Leave. I know most people put Violent Crimes on their favorite songs, but while I like it, it's one of Kanye's most overrated songs in my opinion. Anyways, I would personally rate this album an 8 out of 10. This album, for me, has a lot of the same issues as Donda. I feel like it goes on a little too long, especially with around 1/3 of the album feeling very mediocre. Now, with the negative comments out of the way, I will say this album has a lot of the highlights as well. Some of my favorite tracks include Otis, No Church in the Wild, the song Where They're in Paris, Primetime, which is criminally underrated, and Murdered Excellence. I would give this album an 8 out of 10. Kanye's first album is what many people consider to be his greatest, and I can understand why. I like every track, and it has some pretty good highlights, but the album as a whole never hit as hard as it did for some other people for me. Highlights of this album, though, include, for me, Two Words, which is Kanye's most underrated song in my opinion, Through the Wire, Jesus Walks, Spaceship, All Falls Down, and The New Workout Plan. I would give this album an 8.5 out of 10. This album is very comparable to The College Dropout, being very consistent and having a similar sound in my opinion. I just think this album has slightly better highlights to it. The albums are probably the closest in quality on my rankings though, and I could see myself coming back to these rankings and disagreeing. Some highlights include Roses, Late, Gone, Diamonds from Sierra Leone, and Gold Digger. I would rate this album an 8.5 out of 10. This is one of Kanye's most experimental albums, if not his most. I consider this album to be one of Kanye's most inconsistent, but it has the greatest highlights of any Kanye album for me. Send It Up, Guilt Trip, and I'm In It, though, are some of Kanye's weakest tracks in general, in my opinion. My favorite songs, though, include New Slaves, my all-time favorite Kanye song, Black Skinhead, On Sight, Bound 2, I Am a God, and Hold My Liquor. I would rate the album an 8.5 out of 10. This was the first Kanye album I listened to, and it was a great introduction. The track list, other than Drunken Hot Girls, is Kanye's most consistent in my opinion. Everyone always says Barry Bonds is a filler song, but I've never seen why. It's a great track in my opinion. My personal favorite tracks include, though, Homecoming, Flashing Lights, Stronger, Can't Tell Me Nothing, Everything I Am, and The Glory. I would give this album a 9 out of 10. While having a lot of filler intermissions, the actual tracks on this album have no skips in my opinion. Highlights and Wolves are my least favorite tracks for sure, but I even like them. This album features some of Kanye's most impressive production in my opinion, especially with songs like Famous and Feedback. My personal favorite tracks are No More Parties in LA, St. Pablo, 30 Hours, Famous, Waves, and FML. I would rate it a 9.5 out of 10. While I can definitely see why people wouldn't put it at number 1, I think it's deserving for the praise it gets. I think it's a near perfect album. I love every track on it, with some of my favorite Kanye songs ever ending up on here. It has some of Kanye's best instrumentals such as Hell of a Life and All of the Lights. My favorite tracks include Dark Fantasy, Gorgeous, Power, All of the Lights, Monster, and Runaway. I would rate it a 9.5 out of 10. I hope that you enjoyed the video, even if you highly disagreed with my opinions. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy the video. I put a lot of effort into it, and I'm pretty close to 100 subscribers. Anyways, that's it. Peace. Shoe Cranny out.